Good morning, guys. Coach Castle back again for another treadmill talk. In case you guys didn't know, the purpose of these was so that you're doing your cardio or you're doing your treadmill, you're alone with nobody to chat to, you're telling me you're bored. Well, now you can walk in the treadmill with me and learn. And today's topic is going to be all about sleep, specifically all the stuff you don't know. And it's really important that you do know. So it's basically sleep for health and performance, let's say. Now, in case you didn't know, sleep is the greatest legal performance-enhancing drug that most people are probably neglecting in the sports world. Sleep is not just about physical recovery, but it's also about skill learning, memory retention, and returning your body to homeostasis. Not sleeping sufficiently, which would be classified as 6 hours of sleep or less, will cause your time to physical exhaustion to drop by up to 30% after a single night of less than 6 hours of sleep. So basically, you can spend all your time training for a 10-round fight if you're a boxer, be in the perfect fighting condition, but then the night before the fight, if you sleep less than 6 hours, you're going to be physically exhausted by round 7 rather than round 10. This is how important sleep is. Also, your lactic acid will build up much faster. The ability of your lungs to actually expire carbon dioxide and inhale or inspire oxygen decreases considerably the less sleep that you actually have. Now, human beings are the only species that deliberately deprive themselves of sleep for no apparent reason. In other words, dear Mother Nature has never faced the challenge of coming up with a safety net for lack of sleep. We've never evolutionarily been forced to come up with that solution in our bodies. This is an entirely modern problem which has only risen up in the past 70 years. So the body will adapt and evolve over time to deal with different environmental stressors. Now, an example everybody knows would be the fat storage system or the feast and famine system. Now, this is because evolutionary in the past, our species faced times of famine or starvation, as well as times of feast or overabundance. Now, the body, being the intelligent system that it is, learned to adapt to when we have an overabundance of calories, and it is stored up as caloric energy in our fat cells. Then, these fat cells, or adipose cells, can be used like batteries when you go into famine. You can spend the caloric credit. Unfortunately, sleep is not like the storage system, which acts as the bank. There's no way to accumulate sleep debt during the week and then pay it off on the weekend. You can try to get back some of the debt, but there is no credit system within the brain for sleep. You must be sleeping sufficiently nightly, or you will suffer the many consequences. I'll get into those in just a minute, but unfortunately, there really is no way to know how much sleep debt you're in, so it is in your best interest to sleep adequately every night. Sleeping below 6 hours of sleep have massive impairments in your brain and your body. Your peak muscle strength, vertical jump height, max running speed, grip strength, ability to breathe, all correlate directly with sleep. Lack of sleep will also greatly increase your injury risk. The less sleep that you get, the higher your injury risk. If you look at the stability muscles versus the major muscles, the stability muscles will fail when you're not getting sufficient sleep. This leads to an increased risk of injuries. Furthermore, lack of sleep causes mental exhaustion, translating to very poor mental focus, poor reflexes, and missteps. Sleeping less than adequately will result in something like a 50 to 60% increase in probability of injury. And sleep is also critical for things like fine motor skills, memory storage, and skill learning, as I mentioned. Before you go to sleep, you have gaps in your motor learning skills abilities. Now, sleep does not necessarily improve the places where you already have good motor skills. Rather, what it does is selectively see the places where you're bad and intelligently finding those problem points or the friction points in your motor skill set, and it smooths out those deficits in your learning. So you'll actually come back the next day with a 20 to 30% improved skill or more, possibly, with your automatic skills. Now, this is if you sleep sufficiently. Now, many of us have heard the expression, I'm going to go sleep on a problem or sleep with a problem, etc. But one of the benefits of dream sleep is during dream sleep, we take all the information that we have previously learned our entire lives and we combine it with all of the new information that we've learned that day. They kind of have a meeting and chat, decide what to keep, what to throw out. So it's at this point that the brain starts to seek out and test novel connections and new associations. After completing this process, you will wake up the next morning with a revised mind and now capable of divining incredible solutions to previously impenetrable problems. So just an example, Dmitri Mendeleev came up with the periodic table of elements by way of dream-inspired insight, meaning he actually took all of the known elements in the universe and figured out how they would struck together in a chart. That's pretty crazy. So his waking brain could not complete the task, spent years on it. However, his sleeping brain did solve the problem, and it did it in only one night. He woke up and feverishly wrote it all down. It's pretty cool. Now, an effective way to demonstrate how critical sleep is to the process of skill learning is basically with a quick study I'll summarize for you. In this study, rats were placed in a maze to test how much sleep affected their ability to create new navigational pathways, memories, and skilled motor movements. So, very simple. This was accomplished by placing electrodes onto different parts of the rat's brain, and by implanting these electrodes, it's possible to have a measure of the brain cells that are firing as they're firing as the rat is running around the maze. So the brain plays sort of a tone, like a musical tone, as the rats learn the signature of the maze. Now as the rats are running around this maze, you can actually listen to their brains in real time as they're learning the signature of the maze, and with a very particular tone and tempo kind of as they go through the walls. Then, when the rats were allowed to sleep, while still wearing the attachments to their brain, the researchers listened to the brain and they heard basically a sped up version of the tone, replaying the exact same tone that the rats had learned as they were going through the maze. But even though it was the same sequence, the memory sequence that the rats were learning while they were awake, it was now replaying at a speed that was 20 times to 30 times faster during their sleep. This basically meant that the rats who slept more were better able to rehearse those skills, and the more time that the rats spent rehearsing the main sequence, the better they performed the next day. What this means is that you do not simply have to go to sleep and then save all your memories. That's not how it works. You'll be scoping out those memories in your brain, and you will be improving your neurological connections as you sleep, but only if you sleep sufficiently. So practice does make perfect, but also practice with the correct night of sleep makes much more perfect. Now, basically, this is because when you come back the next day after sufficient sleep, your performance and whatever skill you were practicing will be around 20 to 30% better than it was at the conclusion of your practice the day before. Now, we're also going to talk about the impact of sleep on hormones, because it's pretty big. Now, one of the main reasons for sleeping is to renew the energy systems of the body and produce anabolic effects. Lacking sufficient sleep prevents these beneficial effects. Now, the major hormones affected by sleep deprivation include growth hormone, testosterone, epinephrine, norepinephrine, cortisol. Your thyroid hormone metabolism is also adversely affected by insufficient sleep. All of these things. I mean, it's a lot, guys. I could keep going down the list, but those are the biggies. Now, in addition, lack of sleep can promote the increased incidence of training injuries and the delay of actually healing those injuries. So, just on the hormones that control your appetite and your weight, one of them is called leptin, and the other one is called ghrelin. Now, you've heard me speak about these many times before, but leptin is the chemical that tells your brain you're full, satiated, and you don't want to eat anymore. Now, ghrelin does the opposite. It's your hunger hormone, and it says you need to eat more. If you're not satisfied with your food, keep eating. Now, a lack of sleep will suppress your leptin levels and raise your ghrelin levels, meaning you will experience food cravings and increased appetite the following day. Now, sleep deprivation is also known to alter anabolic and catabolic processes in the muscle. Anabolic basically just refers to the processes which build more muscle, while catabolic effects result in a breakdown of the muscle or digestion of the muscle. Now, if you are not getting sufficient sleep during a diet, your body will store more fat and build less muscle, compared to if you were getting enough sleep. So what this means is people who are sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night will on average eat somewhere between 200 to 300 extra calories per day, and this is because of their underslept state. Now if you add that up, it's 700,000 extra calories, or 10 to 15 pounds of fat by the end of the year, extra calories. Furthermore, it's not just when you go under sleep, you eat more, you also eat more of the wrong things, or the heavy-hitting carbohydrates and simple sugars or processed foods. You'll also stay away from healthy leafy greens and proteins. Now this is because your body is specifically craving high-calorie foods, carbohydrates which digest quickly, and fat. A lack of sleep really does have a strong obesogenic profile to it. If you look at the rise of obesity in the past 70 years, it literally goes hand in hand with sleep. If you plot it on a graph, the amount of sleep that society is getting goes in the exact opposite direction of where it was to. Now, as sleep time has decreased, obesity rates have increased. As I said, it's a strictly linear relationship. Also, by the way, I'm thinking of it, just a word on fasting and extreme dieting where you cut a lot of calories. When you're in these two occurrences, your sleep will suffer a lot. Now, this is because the only natural occurrences of this form of sleep deprivation is in nature. When there is an occurrence of famine, basically you're starving, that's what fasting is. And the species must stay awake longer to increase their circumference of area where they forage for food. So it's not good to do that, and it really stresses you out. And furthermore, will fuck up your sleep. So about sleep impairment, by the way, for those of you who don't know, an interesting fact would be that after 20 hours of not sleeping, you will be as impaired as a legally drunk person, both physically and mentally. Now again, if you didn't know, drowsy driving kills more people on the road than either alcohol or drugs combined. When you are underslept, you start to have what are called micro sleeps or micro naps. Sometimes your eyelids will not close all the way, just kind of partially closes. But the brain essentially goes to sleep for a very brief period of time. I mean, you can even see the individual brain cells going to sleep if you have the person hooked up to electrodes like a rat. Now, a word for all you people who think sleeping 5 or 6 hours and they wake up feeling great. Now, I'm one of these people who used to be saying these things, oh, I only need 4 hours of sleep, I only need 5 hours of sleep, I wake up, I feel good. A couple things to say. So number one, your subjective sense of your sleep deprivation is a horrible predictor of the objective facts. So when you are sleep deprived, you do not actually know how sleep deprived you are because you're sleep deprived. So a simple comparable example would be if you went to the bar, had a few drinks with a friend, you feel like you're fine to drive home. However, your sober friend, who will objectively tell you you should not be driving, as he recognizes you're too impaired. Now, statistically, if you actually took the number of people in the entire world who can survive on less than 6 hours of sleep without showing any impairment, and you rounded that to a whole number and expressed it as a percentage of the entire population, the number would be 0. So, yes, the number of people who can exist without any impairment from less than 6 hours of sleep effectively is such a small number of the percentage of the world that it needs to be represented as a 0. Meaning, I doubt very much you are one such individual. Now, your prefrontal cortex, or the rational and logical part of your brain, that's one of the very first things to become impaired when you're sleep deprived. The deep emotional centers of the brain, which are normally controlled and kept in check by the prefrontal cortex, are now suddenly running rampant, and without the ability to be controlled, basically leading to very poor decision making, impaired judgment, just really bad decisions, basically. People call it lack of willpower, lack of focus. They'll just do dumb things. Now also, in regard to longevity or aging, insufficient sleep will also even erode the very biological fabric of life. Consistently sleeping 6 hours or less for a week will result in 711 genes being distorted. Of those 711 genes, half will be switched off by the 6 hours of sleep. These will be the genes related to your immune response. Now, sleep is vital for the overall immune response, meaning keeping you from getting sick, basically. The other half of the genes will be overexpressed or increased in their activity. These are the genes that are related to the promotion of tumors, long-term chronic inflammation within the body, and all cardiovascular disease. So even your longevity gene is part of the circadian rhythm, and when you disrupt your circadian rhythm, either through lack of sleep, jet lag, or just aging in general, that will diminish your circadian rhythm ability to form high and low peaks, which is critical. Now, there are two levels of sleep, and they are known as non-REM sleep, or NREM, and REM sleep, or rapid eye motion sleep. Now, dreams arise throughout REM sleep, wherein the mind is incredibly energetic, even though the body is paralyzed. Now, you're paralyzed probably by nature to prevent us from harming ourselves with our movement during our sleep, because you're actually relearning skills in your sleep. You don't want to be kicking and punching in your sleep. And the major role of non-REM sleep is thought to be related to energy conservation and nervous system recuperation. For example, it's during non-REM sleep that growth hormone is released. 75% of the entire daily release of growth hormone occurs at that time. Now, insufficient sleep will blunt or even permit the optimal level of growth hormone needed to promote muscular recuperation following training. Non-REM sleep is also the time when anabolic hormone release is maximized, things like testosterone. Now, growth hormone is primarily released during slow wave sleep. Aerobotically fit athletes tend to experience greater amounts of slow wave sleep and sleep longer than those who aren't as fit. Now, growth hormone is known to accelerate the healing of injuries because it promotes increased collagen synthesis. I won't get into that, but it's good for you. Now, another effect of growth hormone is to preserve muscle, of course. Now, the body releases growth hormone to preserve muscle mass and prevent the catabolic effects of muscle. Another reason you have to train hard or intensely when you're on a diet. Now, along with the lack of growth hormone that occurs with sleep deprivation, an increase in cortisol also occurs. Now, this also explains why growth hormone significantly rises after about 24 hours of fasting, just so you know. Now, your entire waking life, as well as your sleep, is broken up into 90-minute ultradian cycles. Now, if you look at our ability to do any form of problem solving, math problems, driving, learning anything really, it tends to ramp up slowly within a 90-minute cycle, peak, and then come down at the end of that 90-minute cycle. Think like a bell curve. And sleep is the same. In sleep, we go through stage 1, 2, 3, and 4 REM cycles. Now, the critical thing to understand here is that one complete REM cycle is 90 minutes. And it seems that the ideal number of cycles for most is 5 cycles of sleep, or 7.5 hours of sleep. Think of it as 5 90-minute blocks of sleep. If you end your sleep after a 90-minute cycle, it will be the best time to wake up, as you will be feeling awake and alert. So basically, try really hard not to interrupt one of your sleep cycles with your alarms. Now, the consequences of doing so will be grogginess, impaired cognitive ability, lethargy, and the desire to return to sleep to complete the cycle. So just a quick example, if you've been given the decision to sleep 6 hours, which is 4 complete cycles of REM sleep, or to sleep 7 hours, thus gaining the additional hour of sleep, you would be much better off waking up at the 6-hour mark, as you will wake up refreshed as at the end of your sleep cycle. If you wake up at the end 7 hours, your alarm will go off, you'll wake up in the middle, and it'll screw you up. So whatever time you plan on waking up in the morning, it should be the same every day. You should then count backwards the necessary number of cycles, and that would be your bedtime, give or take a few minutes. Now, just an additional few things on sleep. You want to be dimming the lights in your house 2 hours before bedtime. You want to have your last meal about an hour before bed. I personally like doing casing because it clumps in your stomach, keeps you full for the next 10 to 12 hours. You don't wake up in the middle of the night hungry. You're going to be wanting to take a hot bath or a hot shower just before going to sleep. Now, the reason for this is pretty simple. In order to go to sleep quickly, your body needs to cool itself, your brain specifically, by 2 to 3 degrees. So an easy way to do this is to take a hot bath or hot shower. And this is because it basically causes a thermal heat dump as your body tries to evacuate the heat from your torso, pushing it into your limbs, basically cooling you down rapidly. Also, sleeping in a cold room with multiple layers of blankets to be removed throughout the night is very helpful. Make sure you're drinking plenty of water. As far as sleep supplements for you guys who are having trouble going to sleep, 3 milligrams of slow-release melatonin, kava kava, a Benadryl taken before bed. These things all work very well in promoting sleep. If you've had too much caffeine, take some St. John's wort or thianine. And furthermore, as far as caffeine is concerned, do not consume caffeine 8 hours prior to bed. Now this is because of the half-life of it. And as always, guys, don't be looking at screens and stuff just before bed. Try to keep that stuff turned off an hour or two before bed. So that's all I got for sleep. I hope it helps everybody. Just a reminder, we are all in this together. We're all trying to get better. I'm sharing the best information I can, all the latest science, you guys. All I'm asking is you share these videos so other people can get the information. Leave a comment, is it helpful, a like, and don't forget to subscribe, everybody. Anything you want me to speak on, leave in the comments and I'll get to it soon. Have a great day, everyone.